بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأصلي وأسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى أهله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. A textbook on Orthodox Sunni Creed, the Creed of Al-Wasitiyyah, being a translation of Al-Aqidah Al-Wasitiyyah by Shaykh al-Islam Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah rahimullah, born 661, died 728 after Hijrah, translated by Abu Rumaysa with annotation from other works of Ibn Taymiyyah and accompanying Arabic text. Introduction. Ibn Taymiyyah wrote, a Shafi judge from Wasit visited me while on his way to Hajj. His name was Radiyul Din al-Wasiti, and he was clearly a righteous and religious man. He complained of the state of people in the lands of Iraq and in the Tatar lands, the ignorance, injustice, and the loss of religiosity and knowledge. He asked me to write a tract of creed for him that he and his family may rely on. I excused myself, saying that people had already outdone numerous works on the topic, and I advised him to choose some of those written by the Imams of the Sunnah. Instead, that I write one saying that he will only accept the treatise written by himself. So while sitting after Asr, I wrote this tract for him, and copies of it have been spread throughout Egypt, Iraq, and other places. This then was the reason why the author penned this credo work, despite its being written in such a short period of time, in one afternoon, and being relatively short in length. The tract is comprehensive and marked by its thorough and precious statement. It summarizes the early works written by Imam of the Sunnah, and presents the creed highlighted therein in a clear and lucid manner. As one would expect of the author, the work draws heavily on the Quran and authentic hadiths of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It commences by listing articles of belief concerning Allah, in particular His names and attributes, and the principles which must be applied to understand them. It then moves on to discuss topics such as the Quran, seeing Allah, the punishment of the grave, some of the descriptions of the last day, and the events that will occur therein, the divine decree, fate, the companions, and the awliya. Of significant note is that the creed closes with a discussion about the moral conduct that a Muslim should adhere to. By this, the author intended to show that the Islamic creed is not mere dogma, but as a practical role, translating into ethical conduct conducive to the betterment of the individual and society. The writing of this creed generated a great deal of controversy amongst Ibn Taymiyyah's contemporaries, and he was accused of anthropomorphism and deviancy. In the year 705 Hijriya, and after Hijrah, 705 HN Hijriya, and this calendar of Hijriya, after Hijrah, gatherings were convened in which the creed was read and discussed at length, and the author interrogated. Ibn Taymiyyah himself later wrote down his recollections of what had occurred in those gatherings. In these recollections, he writes that when asked about his creed that he was propagating, he replied, "Creed is not taken from me or from those greater than me. It is taken from Allah, His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the consensus of the Salaf of this nation. Anything in the Quran and the authentic Sunnah, such as what is found in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, must be believed." The point being made here was that the source of creed was revelation, not the views and opinions of men. As such, he was laying out the premise of the tribunal, stating that it could only be conducted if based on the three sources he had mentioned. It was in keeping with this that when one of the attendees tried to achieve a compromise by saying that since Ibn Taymiyyah was a Hanbali, everyone should agree. And Ibn Taymiyyah was not a Hanbali. Ibn Taymiyyah, some people say that he was an Hanbali, and then he returned from he left the manhaj of Hanbali, but Ibn Taymiyyah was upon Quran and Sunnah. He was not a person who adhered to any of the madhab. He was following Quran and Sunnah. Everyone should agree that this tract was written in accordance to the way of Imam Ahmad. And Auda responded by saying, I have compiled the creed of the Salaf, one and all. Imam Ahmad is not to be particularized with it, for he is merely someone who conveyed the knowledge that was brought by the Prophet ﷺ. Wa Ahmad to concoct something that the Messenger did not bring, we will not accept it. This tract comprises the creed of Muhammad ﷺ. He said this because the assumption in the suggestion the suggestion was that other Imams could well have different but equally valid creeds. Furthermore, Ibn Taymiyyah wrote that he repeatedly challenged his opponent to bring one word from those who lived in the first 3 generations that were praised by the Prophet ﷺ, which opposed what he had written, asserting that he would then retract his position. He gave them 3 years to meet his challenge. It was never met. The gathering concluded with the resolution that the information contained in the treatise was correct and the tract acceptable. Shortly after and despite his being cleared of the charges leveled against him, he was again summoned before a committee in Egypt to answer certain ideological charges. The judge to preside over this committee was Ibn Makhluf, a well-known antagonist of Ibn Taymiyyah, and for this reason Ibn Taymiyyah refused to answer any question posed to him, arguing that it was unfair to have his opponent judge him. His outburst infuriated the judge, who sent him to prison. 1 year later, he was offered a conditional release, which he declined, and a further 6 months later, he was released on pardon by the Amir Muhana ibn Isa. The text is important in that it offers the reader a deeper insight into the correct creed and enhances one's appreciation of the simplicity of the Islamic creed in its pristine purity, away from the sophistry of many philosophers, thinkers, and academics. This insight and appreciation will, by the permission of Allah, preserve the reader from falling into doubts and suspicion, remove any lingering doubts, and assist the Muslim in the journey to Allah through this worldly life. 2 crucial editions of the text were used to prepare this translation: Abu Muhammad Ashraf ibn al-Maqsud, Adwa al-Salaf, Riyadh, 1989, Al-Alawi ibn al-Qadir al-Saqaf, Darul Hijrah, Riyadh, 1985. Brief explanation notes were added, drawing from the various works of Ibn Taymiyyah amongst others, and also from the explanation of Khalid ibn Abdullah al-Musli. Abu Rumaysa, 29th Shawwal 1429 after Hijriya, 28 October 2008.